Welcome back to another video, and today, yes, we have Xiao on screen, and I truly do feel bad. I really do, because it's not enough that Hoyoverse at most turns of the meta or Abyss recycling that they have to make sure that Xiao players just can't be fully comfortable with how they want to play the game, but at the same time, it seems like whenever he does come back, it's not at the best time. Right? People will be like, the hell are you talking about, Walrus? The Lantern Festival is the best time for Xiao to return, right? Like thematically, it just makes sense. And well, yes, you are right in that regards, and you're also right in the fact that if you're wondering, well, Faruzan just came out, so isn't a Xiao rerun just perfect? And yes, that's all correct, but we have to talk about this from like a general perspective, talking about 3.4. You got Alhaitham, probably one of the most hyped up characters in Sumeru. You have the reruns of Hu Tao as well as Yalan, along with their weapon banners, because Xiao not only has to compete when it comes to character styles, because when we talk about pulling on banners, it's always about primo gems, values, where you're going to be spending your primos. Now, not only does Xiao have to compete with two very well designed characters, in my opinion, as very popular, strong, consistent, he has to compare with their weapons. It's unfair, in my opinion. It truly is unfair that Hoyoverse puts him in this position, but like we say in real life, because things really aren't fair for the most part. But today in this video, I want to just kind of highlight how unfair it can really get, right? When it comes to Xiao, people's defense for him is always like, oh, he can be the content, he doesn't do damage, and I never said he doesn't. There's not a single DPS-oriented character in Genshin Impact who fails to clear the content that's available to you, right? So then where's the problem? It's not really a problem. It's how you want to approach the game of Genshin Impact, right? Let's use a character like Hu Tao, for example. Hu Tao as a character, we all know she focuses around her charge attack, she focuses around the reaction of Vaporize, right? Very simple, very straightforward. And there's very little nuances to her kit, apart from her losing health, which Xiao actually shares a similar trait with. So they're both spear users, while Hu Tao uses her charge attack, Xiao uses his plunge attacks. Now, the first big difference that these two characters have, which actually makes Xiao a little more annoying to play already. Don't worry, Hu Tao's annoying as well, we'll get into that later. But first thing is, Xiao's power is locked behind his burst skill, whereas Hu Tao's is at her very easily accessible elemental skill, right? She has elemental infusion, just like Xiao does. They both have elemental infusion. So let's talk about the environment in which they do damage. Let's not even talk about the ceiling of their damage yet, just talking about the environment in which they have to deal damage. Xiao plunges, Hu Tao charges. Both of these actions interacts with the enemy in a different way. But Hu Tao fortunately has a tool in her kit where if you are doing the animation canceling correctly, you can kind of make up for hitting the enemies around a little bit, and you can actually catch them where they land. There's a common mechanic when it comes to Hu Tao where she can actually juggle your enemies. And yes, Vaporize still procs and everything is fine. She doesn't lose anything from the positioning of the enemies. In fact, Hu Tao has it in her kit to kind of make up for the disruption of the enemy positions. Whereas Xiao now, see, the first glaring issue is with Xiao's plunge attacks, most of the enemies are being pushed away. It's incredibly annoying. If you've played Xiao, it's one of the main things that ticks people off is if you don't have Xiao Giga built and can't kill enemies within like a couple plunge attacks, once they leave your plunge circle, especially because you plunge in a circle, so you end up pushing them all away. And if you can't kill them, especially in Spiral Abyss 12, and you have like 3-4 of those stronger, bulkier enemies, and you push them all away, now you have 4 enemies who are all outside of your plunge attack range, and now you have to figure out a way to regroup them. Fortunately, our gods, our saviors, Hoyoverse has provided you guys a very easily accessible solution in that of C6 Faruzan. Oh, did you not catch the sarcasm? Point is, Xiao's solution to his own issue resides in a character that is outside of himself, whereas Hu Tao's solution to her problem resides in a built-in mechanic in which you can easily maneuver around. See, that's a first W to Hu Tao. Now we can talk about ceiling, right? When it comes to Hu Tao's ceiling and Xiao's ceiling, it depends on how many enemies you're fighting, but there's a reason why Hu Tao's usage has just been so consistent over Xiao. Hu Tao's usage has actually been one of the better ones in terms of a DPS character that was released all the way back in 1.3. She's an amazing character, and yes, at one point, Hu Tao, Xiao, and Ganyu were mixed in as one category of characters, the Li Yue Big Three, and that hasn't really changed. People think that when I'm talking about Xiao not being valuable, that I'm talking down on him and saying he is trash. Just because a character isn't praised on all fronts doesn't mean people are talking down upon them. When it comes to value, Xiao versus Hu Tao, it's very difficult to make a case for Xiao unless you are just a diehard simp for him. You love this character, you shouldn't be watching this video, right? The only thing that'll happen to you when you watch a lot of these kind of videos is people are going to start swaying you one way or another way, or you're ignoring them regardless, so why are you watching them? When it comes to being a good DPS, you want consistency, you want a great ceiling, and also you just want them to be hassle-free. And when it comes to Xiao, he has problems that are more difficult to solve than some of the other DPS options you have around. So right now, actually, I'm making this video because in my last stream, a ton of newer players tuned in, and they just asked me, what is Xiao's pulse value? Where we were so heated and talking about Hu Tao, Yelan, Al Haitham, and all this stuff, and we forgot that Xiao is rerunning. And it took like an hour or something before finally somebody's like, what about Xiao? And that's why I'm making this video right now. Listen, if you're watching this video, you want Xiao, pull Xiao. Damage-wise, ceiling-wise, if he's hitting multiple enemies, he can even outperform Hu Tao. He can outperform a lot of characters in the game in the right conditions. But see, another condition is that, well, he needs to hit 3-4 enemies. And at the same time, if you want to have a comfortable time playing Xiao, you want to pair him with a high constellation Fadozan, ideally a C6, because guess what? That issue that I talked about, that main problem that Xiao has pushing enemies away with his plunge attacks, it becomes a non-issue with C6 Fadozan. And with a character like Fadozan coming out, you can say in one way that HoYoverse has designed a character to plug the issues that Xiao had. But this is a retrospective fix. Hu Tao doesn't really have characters that comes out that fixes her issues. They only come out to continuously complement her strength. When it comes to Yelan, look at what Yelan has done for Hu Tao. Now, yes, Yelan didn't revolutionize Hu Tao, but Yelan actually was a great bonus to Hu Tao teams without having to like cover up some of her weaknesses. Now, yes, Hu Tao has glaring weaknesses. She has a HP problem that most people just at the very beginning struggle to deal with. She has a necessity for playing with a shielder. A lot of her stronger meta comps has no healers. You know why? Because Hu Tao hates being above 50% HP. It's incredibly annoying for people whenever they quit playing Hu Tao. It's always going to be this, right? I hate having to juggle that HP and animation canceling. It's going to be one of these two problems. And that's completely fine, right? Like that's her main weakness. But as you guys can see, you don't really need a unique specialized unit to compensate for her weakness, and it borderlines makes you feel like you have to get that unit. A lot of people would say, well, Zhongli, duh, but you can play Toma, right? You can play plenty of other shielders in the game that fulfills that role. Zhongli is just the best option. Give me another Anemo buffer that can also group enemies for you simultaneously with your on-field Anemo attacker, right? At a certain point, it just feels like HoYoverse made these characters to kind of cover for some of Xiao's flaws to make sure that he stays relevant as a modern DPS option. And to be honest, he is still a relevant modern DPS options even without Fadozan, right? Take Fadozan away from the equation, damage-wise, he's just a little annoying to play. But when it comes to pull value, decisions, I don't just want to spit out a damage number, because to be frank with you, if he's just purely talking about DPS, then all of this stuff becomes a non-issue, non-matter. Just pick the one who deals the best DPS overall, or the characters that have the best usages in Abyss overall, and those data are all plastered everywhere online. But as I've come to realize answering your questions in live streams, it's almost impossible to copy and paste the response from one player to the next player. The best I can do for you is to highlight Xiao's shortcomings, get it because he's short, and flaws, while also telling you where it is that he is strong at, the type of character he is. Because what free-to-play players often don't have a chance to get a feel for are how these characters feels 1 month, 2 months, 3 months later? How are they going to perform in teams, metas, and how much of their weaknesses are going to become glaring issues through your day-to-day playstyle? And when it comes to Xiao, think about it like this. If you're using him in the overworld, if you want him to do damage, he has to either elemental skill, dash through, which kind of is like a Hu Tao charge attack, to be honest with you. That's a Nemo. Or he's going to have to use his burst and start plunging. When it comes to ease of use, characters that rely on their burst skills to do damage are just not a good fit for the general task of running around and killing things. Sure, you can kill enemies with your normal attack, but then you are essentially locking away the most beautiful part of Xiao's kit, because it's like, oh, I don't need to use this in the overworld. I'm just going to run around and dash around with him. Whereas characters like Hu Tao, characters like Yoimiya, characters who rely on their elemental skill, just feel better. And this is something that if you play these characters a lot all the time, you'll get a feel for it, right? Same with characters like Kazuha. Great characters oftentimes have good ways to be utilized outside of difficult content. Overworld is going to be where you spend the majority of your time, and I'm not saying Xiao's bad. It's just at times it could feel like that he leaves much to be desired in terms of how useful he can be without going all out. It's like Xiao knows no chill. But finally, on the scale of a DPS character, Xiao still sits atop of a lot of mediocre ones. Yes, he does bleed HP when he's in his burst skill. Yes, he also plunges enemies away. And yes, his vertical progression in terms of constellation is absolutely horrendous, one of the worst in the game. And even if you get him to C6, there's a special condition where you have to hit more than one enemy. So if you're hitting like boss enemies where you're really going to struggle against these, for example, bosses like the Golden Wolf Lord, like these are some of the enemies that people are actually struggling with. Even if you had a C6 Xiao, it wouldn't really matter. Your C6 Xiao would be doing nothing special. That's the kind of issues. He doesn't really have a light at the end of the tunnel, is what I'm saying. It's just a tunnel, and you get to walk this tunnel with Xiao in complete perpetual darkness. But if you enjoy it, if you feel like because Xiao is with you, you feel safe, pull him, right? If he gives you that peace of mind, pull him, and make sure to get Fadozen. That's all I'm saying. If you pull Xiao now and you didn't get Fadozen, make sure to pull for Fadozen copies on reruns, because you're going to need her to make Xiao feel complete. That's all I'm saying. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comparatively to other units in 3.4, likely he's going to feel like a weaker character. But generally speaking, you're not at a loss if you pick him up, okay? You're not winning either though, but you're not losing. And to some people, that's more than enough. Until next time, for Jodo, stay safe. Peace, peace.